So welcome. This is session 1, teaching an authentic lesson with conditionals. My name is Cindy Baldacchini. I'm an elementary curriculum developer here at CodeHS, and I have Portia, Morel, and Sandy both supporting today. They will also be presenting at different times today. For any questions you have, please put them in the Slack. We will answer them in the Slack. And also, if you wouldn't mind staying muted so that so the presenter can present her slides. And if you need to unmute, you can just drop that in the Slack. The session you heard is being recorded and it will be shared publicly, just so you know that. So I am excited to welcome Sandy Ahlstrom, one of our curriculum developers and an previous elementary computer science teacher, to present. So Sandy, I'm going to turn it over to you. You can start sharing your screen.
All right. Let me see here. Oops, that is not. All right, there we go. Okay, can you see my slides all right? All right. So I'm Sandy Ahlstrom, and as Cindy said, I taught computer science for many years at the elementary and 6th grade levels. And I now work for CodeHS with the elementary curriculum. And although this session is geared towards elementary, middle school-ish, there are probably some ideas. I saw that a few of you were in high school or teaching high school. And so I should be able to still help you with some techniques to help students learn how to understand and use conditionals. So let me minimize this here. There we go. So first of all, if you would in the chat, tell me well, you've already done the grades, so never mind. Thank you, Cindy. But I do want to hear from you if you have used Scratch before. This is going to help me a little bit in guiding the session. Stacy, I see you. Yes, a lot. Ron, yes. I have Scratch CS principles. Some no's, about 2 years. Yes, but prefer Python. Snap, yeah. Scratch is fun. I totally agree. I agree with you, Ron. Okay, so the next one is, how comfortable are you actually teaching computer science? And if it's somewhere in between, that's fine too. Not at all, somewhat. Pretty confident. Love it, and I'm still learning. Absolutely. Aren't we all? Oh, good. Okay. Let me go ahead and get started in this. And the goals for today, and like I said, this is more geared towards the younger students, but there are definitely some things that can be used in the older students. So the goals that I want for you today, I want you to understand what conditionals are. Some of you, I'm sure, already do. Some of you are going to be learning. Gain some strategies to teach the conditionals and also to use it in some Scratch programs. So let's talk about conditionals. So what are conditionals and why should we teach them? And why can they be challenging? What is it that makes it difficult for some students to understand? And we teach conditionals because they are just foundational. They are fundamental elements of programming. And they allow us to write programs that are flexible and adaptive. And they can be messy. The reason they can be challenging is when we start teaching coding to students, we start with sequence. All right, so the code's going to run in the sequence that you write it. And we use sequence in other areas as well. And so then we throw in loops, and loops, they can kind of get their head around loops going in circles. But when we throw in conditionals, and then sometimes the code runs and sometimes it doesn't, and we have to determine when it does and when it doesn't. So kids can get a little bit confused about that. But it's very important that when you're teaching conditionals, that students don't think of them as only a coding thing, to really help them to understand what conditionals are, how they work, help them to relate them conditionals to their lives. For example, I'm food motivated. So think about the conditional, if it's lunchtime. If it's lunchtime, if that's true, I'm going to eat lunch. In coding, in this little GIF, if the cat touches the bird, if that's true, then the cat gets a point. One thing that is very important to make sure students understand, and that we understand as well, is that, I lost my mouse, is that conditionals evaluate to either true or false. So it is either true or false. It's Boolean. Kids love that word if you want to use it and teach them what Boolean is. But for younger kids, as long as they understand that there's only two states, either true or false. So I have a few unplugged activities sprinkled in here. And the first one, this is a great activity to start students off in learning conditionals, and have everybody just stand up, tell them the rules, write a conditional on the board, and each student is going to evaluate or decide if that's true or false for them. Then, some examples, like if it's a weekday, jump. And of course, I think you're teaching on a weekday, so they're going to all jump and things like that. And then start doing things where the students are going to evaluate that differently from their neighbor. So, some will start with the letter J, some will not. Do a few of those, but then the real power is when students start creating the game themselves. So my suggestion is have them work in groups of like 2 to 4, give them sticky notes. They love sticky notes. Write down a conditional, slap it up on the front board, and then have a different student come up and read the conditional, and then have a whole game with the student conditionals. And, some things that they might come up with is, if it's summer, clap your hands. If your favorite food is pizza, if you play an instrument, if you've ever baked a cake, things like that, things that are really relatable to them. So let's look at if-then conditionals in Scratch. And I know some of you already know this. It sounds like some of you are familiar with Scratch. So just bear with me, and you can actually jump in to the chat if you have some other comments. I'm just reading some of the comments. Okay, so in Scratch, there are 2 conditional blocks, the if-then and the if-then-else. Sometimes we just say if and if-else. Start with the if-then. And you'll notice the way you build a conditional is with this little shape, okay? And you're going to look for that shape. That is something that Scratch did an awesome job in, is matching shapes to build different kinds of code. So there are some sensing blocks that fit and some operators that fit in there. And so that's how we're going to build the condition. So they can be pretty darn simple. And this one is one of my favorites because if you use the drop down, you can use almost any key on the keyboard. And so the kids, whoever, can really build some fun functionality. This one is if it's touching color, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, if it's touching the edge, or if it's touching, this is another sprite or characters, we call characters in Scratch sprites. But they can also be much more complex by combining things. And I'm not going to go into this a lot right now, but we've got things nested and nested and nested. And you will definitely find that some of your students, if they have enough time, they will be figuring some of this out. This is really powerful. This is a more advanced function. So then we've got the confusion between loops and conditionals. I don't know if anybody else has ever had that with their students, but definitely students sometimes get those mixed up. And so loops, loop, 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 but conditionals don't necessarily run. A loop will run as many times through the code sequentially as the loop dictates. But a conditional, it goes in and it may run and it may not. But this is something I just kind of want to point out that many times we will put conditionals inside of a loop, especially like in Scratch, because when over here, when the flag clicks, when you start the program, it's going to evaluate this. If it's false, it just goes down and never looks at it again. Over here, because we have it in a forever loop, it will continuously check the condition. And that's just a very common thing to miss, and students don't understand why it's not working. So let's look at some examples. So here's a very basic example of a conditional in Scratch. We have two sprites, we have a background, and we're checking if the cat, here's our cat, is touching the starfish. If it's true, then this happens. It then comes down and it says if it's touching this color, which is the water, then this happens. So I would like you to go to Scratch and start working on this. I'm going to go into Scratch myself and show you a little bit here. Let me share that screen. There you go. All right. This is not the right one. Sorry, I have all these open. Hang on, I'm opening the right one. There we go. Okay, here we go. So this is the actual Scratch program. And for those of you that are familiar with Scratch, I encourage you to do this, but also, if you've got some other knowledge or something, go ahead and feel free to just play and have some fun, or to do some things that are a little bit more advanced that you already know.
Hey, Sandy, really quickly.
Yes.
Can you show everyone, just in case if they've never clicked or gone to Scratch, to just how to create a project?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so when you come into Scratch, you can look at your projects by clicking on this button. You can go over to create, and that will create a blank one. So when we're in here, a few different areas, we've got the backdrop, which is the stage or the background. And if I put my mouse there, I've got several options on how to create a backdrop. So I can click there. And we've got quite a few different categories. They've got lots of backgrounds. So you can pick the background. Down here, these are called sprites, and they are the characters that you can program and interact with each other and so on. Again, you can hold your mouse there. You can either choose from their library, you can upload, you can draw your own. And so you can go through here and find the one you want. Just move them around to put them where you want. Over here, we have different categories of code blocks. We have all the codes here. If you don't remember which category the code block is that you're looking for, which I forget sometimes, you can just scroll down. They're not separate. So events, we are always going to start with an event, okay? And when flag clicked is the basic, that starts the program. Just drag them over. And then the conditionals and the loops are under control. So here's the forever loop, here's the if then. So what I want you to do is you can pick whichever of the sprites you want. Make sure you click on it, it shows you here. So that's your little hint. And build some code using a conditional. And I do want to show you, these are super fun. Under the looks, if you want them to react, whatever, if it's touching the crab, what do you want to happen? There's some really fun things in the looks. My favorite is this one. Change color effect by 25, but you can have all kinds of other things go on. This is actually a really fun one, but you can also just have them say things or whatever. So I'm going to give you maybe 4 or 5 minutes. If you haven't already, go ahead and there, Scratch. If you just look up Scratch, you can find scratch.mit.edu. If you're in the slide deck, it's in the slide deck as well. Go ahead and build. I'm going to go back to the slide with the instructions. Let's see here. There you go. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and throw them in the chat. Oh, thank you. I see that you have the link in there. If you don't have a Scratch account like Portia did put in there, you can just go right to create, and it might pop up with a little video or something. You're welcome to watch it or just close it down and start working. You do not have to have an account. You cannot save it, however, then. Oh, Jennifer, yep. And they do have some nice ones in there. So she was talking about the tutorial videos. the fun thing about Scratch is if you go in and start playing, you find things, you figure things out, and there's lots out there. Scratch, I forget who said it was fun, but absolutely it is fun. We'll take maybe another minute or so. All right. If you would, I see Cindy's got some links in there. If you would, just kind of put a quick note in the chat how it went. Did you get anything done? Was there anything new you found? All right, so let's go ahead and continue. The next one I want to look at is the if then, or if then else, or if else. And this is the second of the conditional blocks in Scratch. And what this does is this allows you to program either way, if it's true or if it's false. One thing happens or the other. It takes one path or the other. And this is really important for kids to understand as well, that the if then block, if it's true, something happens, otherwise it doesn't even matter. It just skips all that code. But in an if then else block, it either does one path or it does another. So there's always something happening, true or false. So one thing happens or the other. So another unplugged activity, this one is great. My students always loved it. I don't know if you have decks of cards in your rooms, but if you don't, they're really great. They're easy and they're pretty inexpensive to teach conditionals. I've got just 3 games here. Cards, basically, they're conditionals. For concentration, if you turn 2 cards over, and if they match, you get the cards. Else, you have to turn them back over. In battle, if my card is higher, you put 2 people put cards down. If one card is higher, you get them both, else you lose your card, and so on. I mean, cards are great. Kids love them, and it's very authentic. I mean, it's something that they totally understand. So let's look at this in Scratch again. And this time I want you to remix or create a new one and use the if then else. I'm going to try to get myself to the right Scratch project now. Hang on a sec. Okay, so for example, this one, I have an if else. It is very similar, except that I have it doing two different things. So when I click on the go, it's not touching the dog, so it comes down to the else and it's continuously changing colors. This is the one I was saying is my favorite. And if I move the dog over and it's touching, it says hello because this condition is true. So whether you are remixing or changing the one that you were working on before or creating a new one, go ahead and explore this, and go ahead and explore some of the other code blocks as well if you have time. I'm going to turn that over to you now to start working. Again, if you have any questions or comments, throw them in chat. We'll take just another minute. I've got one other project, and it's a little bit more not challenging, but it's a little bit more, and I think you'll enjoy that one too. So.
And Sandy, if you want to encourage, we'd love to see what some people are coming up with. If they drop the link in the chat, we'll have a look and share it out.
That's a good point. Let me show you how to share. If you want to share a link, click on the share button, and then you can come down here to the copy link, and that's where you can copy it and throw it into the chat. Even if it's not fancy or done, we'd love to see them. Okay, let me go ahead and get back here. Okay, so this is kind of a day in the life, and I think this is such a good authentic, it lets students really code kind of their life. And I would highly suggest that you have them make a flow, a visual flow of this. And for example, If it's a weekday, if that's true, then they go to school. False, else they sleep in. If it's a Wednesday, if that's true, they go to soccer practice, else they ride bikes with friends. If you have older students or you are really they've become familiar, you can also have conditionals nested inside other conditionals, and that gets very fun. Let me get to that. Are you seeing my Scratch program? Is that a yes? Okay, good. All right. So this is the program that I would love for a lot of students to do. And this can be scaled. It can be very simple. It can be scaled up to become a very long, involved program that students can create. And what I want to do is I want to show you what I've done here. This is all kind of housekeeping things. It's to make sure that the sprite starts, where it should, the direction, and so on like that. I also want to show you this one right here, this ask button. This is a sensing, and this is a place where you can have it interactive. You can create this interactive piece. It asks a question, and I'm going to click on my go button, and it waits for a response. Whatever they type in here goes into this, which is actually a variable, the answer, and then you can use that in your conditional. So this one, this person is laying here, I'm assuming it's me. Is it a school day? If I say no, then it follows, it's not, sorry. If the answer is yes, then it's going to go through this code. If it's false, it comes down here. So let's try that again. Is it a school day? If I say yes, the answer is equal to yes, so it follows all of this code. I then have another piece of code down here that asks if it's Wednesday. Is it Wednesday? I'll say no. Then you're going to ride bikes. This is definitely a little bit more involved. It uses broadcast messages, and those are in events here. So if you aren't here yet, if you're still very new to Scratch, I would suggest that you do just very basic and just continue on. But let me just continue on with working on a flow and keep it simple. Okay, if it's a weekday, and you can just determine if it's a weekday. If you've got some questions about that, I was going to share out the link to this. Hang on. Get you out of the way. Cindy, I don't think, did I share this? I don't think I shared this link with you, did I? Sorry, I meant to.
Hey, Sandy, can you demonstrate by clicking on the link in the chat if a teacher wants to see the code versus just run the program? Just for those of you who are new to Scratch, I know that the interface could be a little tricky.
So, is that what you mean? No, I'm not sure what you mean.
Just click on the link that's in the chat, just
Okay.
as if anyone else was trying to open up the project, or I can demonstrate it.
Do you want to do that? Do you have that up?
Sure.
Okay.
So, share my screen. If you click that link in the chat, it would open up to Sandy's project that she just shared. For some of you who have never used this website before, it can be a little tricky to just understand what you're looking at. So this is the main page of when a student has shared a project. You can have instructions and notes, and this is completely interactive where you can just press the green flag and get started with interacting with the project that was created. However, if you would like to know more about the code or the behind the scenes, you can click on the See Inside button. And so when I click this, regardless of if I'm signed in or not, I get to see what code was written from Sandy. And I can also go ahead and modify this. So this is how you can have your students and you as well play and interact and modify code that already exists. Because if it is available on Scratch, you can definitely click on the button to see inside and figure out how things work behind the scenes.
Thank you, Portia. Yeah. That is one of the great things about Scratch is it's very easy to remix code that's already out there. So you don't have to start from scratch, but you can really learn from others as well. Oh, good, Jennifer. I guess that was helpful for you. Good. Thank you, Portia. Okay, we just have a couple more minutes left to work on that. And if you have a Scratch account, you can save those and work on those later. Take a look and see what it does. If you don't have a Scratch account, we'll have the link available for you. Maybe I'll throw it in the slide deck. And so you can always go back to that program.
And we're going to post some of the links now in the chat for you. Remember, you'll get everything next week as well. So don't feel like you need to download it today, but the links will be in the chats.
And I just added that link to that page, slide 41. Excuse me, but I definitely suggest that if you have students do something like this, which is a really good lesson for them to go through that conditional flow, have them visualize it out, write it out ahead of time. I definitely recommend that. The card activities, yeah, I absolutely. Okay, I think we are going to wrap it up here. It looks like Cindy put the slide deck link in chat. And I think there's one more slide I would like to share with you just in closing. So if, I know some of you are high school, but if you are interested in elementary, or maybe your district is, or you're the elementary teachers, we do offer, as Jeremy mentioned this morning, a K-5 solution as well as the middle and high school. And we have a lot of lessons. They are computer science plus other subjects. We have robotics, physical. So we do have a lot of lessons. If you're interested, codehs.com/elementary. And I think any other closing comments, Portia or Cindy? Oh, that's right, Cindy, thank you. In the chat, there are 2 lessons. Did you put both those lessons in there? Okay, there's 2 lessons that they're PDFs of ours. If you want to grab those, you are welcome to.
Sandy, are those linked in the slides? I think they were, right?
They are not, but I will add them.
All right. So if you get the slides, you'll see both of those lessons linked in the slides as well.
Okay, are there any other comments, questions before we go? Thank you, thank you. Well, thank you very much for attending. And Portia will be doing the other 2 elementary track ones, and she's amazing. The others, there's some really good other sessions as well for the other grades and so on. We appreciate you coming on a Saturday.